Hi guys, today's video is an updated version of a previous video on how to knit a crown decrease with a combination of the circular knitting machine and hand knitting. This crown decrease reduces the bulk that is seen with a cinched closure. This technique can be used for hats, but it can also be used for other projects as well where you don't want that extra bulk. Here's a comparison between the crown decreased and a cinched closed. You can see that the crown decrease fits nicely around the top of the head, while the cinch close leaves a bunched up look that is not so flattering with larger heads. This is the skull cap design, which is a little different than a regular hat or beanie. The skull cap is designed to fit tightly to the head and just cover the ears. This style is popular with the guys, mine included. The skull cap is made specifically with the crown decrease, and I'll show you different ways to pick up stitches for easy hand knitting. In this video, I'll show you how to do the machine work, pick up stitches, knit the crown decrease, and the finishing touches along with some alternative methods. You will need a 6mm circular knitting needles in a 40-inch length. You can also use double point needles if you prefer, and you'll also need a stitch marker. So this is what I recommend for knitting the tube using my cheat sheet pattern. To begin, cast on with waste yarn and knit 5 or 6 rows. Change to your main yarn, and you'll need to leave at least a 5-yard or 4.6 meter tail. This is a really long tail, so I like to make a small ball and clip it to the waste yarn tail. This will keep it from untwisting as you knit the cap. The tail will be used to knit the crown decrease. Knit the appropriate rows needed for your size cap, changing colors as necessary. To bind off, again, we need to leave at least a 5-yard or 4.6 meter tail. This time I just place the tail in the center of the machine and change to waste yarn. Then knit 5 or 6 rows and bind off the waste yarn. Once the tube is off the machine, go ahead and give it a stretch in both directions. Now we'll pick up stitches. Picking up stitches is the same for both ends of the tube. Find the gap between the waste yarn and the main yarn. This loose stitch here is the last stitch that we will pick up. The first stitch to pick up is right here. So to pick up the stitches, it's important to keep the stitches straight and not twisted. To do this, we want the right leg of the V-stitch. So insert the needle behind the right leg of each stitch going around. When using waste yarn, it's very easy to see the row of stitches to pick up. In our sample here, I want to pick up that first row of blue stitches. Again, make sure you go behind the right leg of each stitch so we don't twist any stitches. When you reach the end, pull the needles through so all of the stitches are on the cable. Then you can remove the waste yarn, and it should look something like this with all the stitches on the cable. So let's set up the needles for magic loop. With the needles on the right side and all of the stitches on the cable, we want to find the halfway point and pinch the cable. This doesn't have to be exactly halfway. Pull the cable so the stitches are close to the needles. The bottom side is the working set, so push those stitches onto the needle so we can work on the tip of the needle. On the back side, pull the needle out just a little bit and pinch that cable again. I like to leave around 4 or 6 stitches on the right needle. This helps me keep the tension while knitting. That working yarn should be facing the back side of your knitting. Now you can see here we have stitches on the left needle, stitches on the cable, and stitches on our right needle. So this replicates using 3 double-pointed needles, which if you prefer, you can use those as well. So place a stitch marker for the beginning of the row, and we are ready to knit row 1. The first row repeat is knit 2 together. To knit a stitch, insert the right needle into the stitch from front to back. You can see that I'm on the left side of the right leg through the middle of the stitch. Wrap the yarn around the right needle, then use the right needle to draw that loop of yarn through the stitch on the left. Then slide the right needle until the stitch slides off the left needle. That is your first knit stitch. So we'll do this again. So insert your needle from front to back, wrap the yarn around the needle, draw that loop through, and then slide the stitch off the left needle. So now you have knit 2 stitches. And if you remember, our repeat is knit 2 together. So our next stitch is knit 2 stitches together. Insert your needle into the second stitch on the left needle, and then through the first stitch as well. So I have 2 stitches on my right needle, wrap the yarn, and draw that loop through. And then slide, and 2 stitches will come off. And you can see here, I now have 3 stitches that has been worked over 4 stitches. So I have decreased 1 stitch. Now we'll continue working the pattern of knit 2 stitches and knit 2 together until the end of the row. So let's do another repeat. I'm going to knit 1 stitch. So insert the needle front to back, wrap the yarn, draw that loop through, and slide the stitch off the left needle. Again, another knit stitch, front to back, wrap the yarn, draw up a loop, and pull the stitch off the left needle. Now a knit 2 together, go into the second stitch and into the first stitch, all in one motion. Wrap the yarn, draw that loop through, and slide the 2 stitches off the left needle. We're ready for our next repeat. So knit 1, knit 2, and knit 2 together. When you reach the end of the first set of stitches on the needle, we need to reset. Turn the work, pull on the cable, and push these stitches onto the left-hand needle. Now I like to hold my index finger right here just to make sure none of those stitches fall off. Pull the right-hand needle out a little ways. Pinch the cable, leaving 4 to 6 stitches for the right-hand needle. And you're ready to continue with the pattern. If you are using a cinch row machine, you will be able to complete a full repeat and you will not have any stitches left over when you reach the end of the row. Since I am using an addy, you can see here I have 2 stitches left over after the last repeat. For the addy only, we will just knit these 2 stitches. Once these 2 stitches are knit, slide the stitch marker from one needle to the other. If you have a central, you will have 36 stitches remaining, and if you have an addy, you will have 35 stitches remaining. That completes row 1. Row 2 is very easy. We will knit each stitch in the row. So knit all the stitches. Row 3 is another decrease row. This time we will knit 1 and then knit 2 together. Knit 1 stitch, then knit 2 together. Knit 1 stitch and knit 2 together. Continue this repeat pattern till the end of the row. For Addy users, you will knit the last 2 stitches. For Centro, you will have a full repeat. At the end of row 3, you should have 24 stitches. For row 4, you will knit all stitches. Row 5 is our final decrease row. In this row, we will knit 2 together all the way around. When finished with row 5, you can remove the stitch marker and you will have 12 stitches total left. You can go ahead and cut the working yarn, leaving at least a 12-inch tail. Now let's finish this up. Thread that tail on a tapestry needle and weave that tapestry needle through each stitch. So my last stitch is on the back. We want to make sure we go in the same direction, and I'm just going to slip these stitches onto the tapestry needle and then pull that through. And then repeat for the other side. Now I don't cinch this up yet. I wait for the opposite end to be finished as well. So here my tube is finished. Both ends have been decreased. Now I will fold this tube in half, matching wrong sides. Then pull the inside tail to the outside. Now what I like to do is thread the outside tail onto a tapestry needle, and I will pick up a couple of stitches on the inside and then on the outside and alternate going back and forth through most of the 12 stitches. Be careful and don't pick up the drawstring thread or split that thread. Otherwise, it will be hard to cinch closed. Once I'm finished with that, I will go ahead and cinch both ends closed. I usually start with the inside, and on the outside, I like to grab the point before I started picking up stitches, cinching that closed first, and then cinching it all the way closed. Go ahead and give it a good knot and then bury those tails. And this is the final finish of this hat or this cap. This is one side and this is the other side. So let's look at some alternative methods. The first is binding off with knitting needles. The start of the tube is done the same way with waste yarn, and instead of binding off with waste yarn, we'll bind off directly onto the knitting needles. So I have a long cable with a 6mm needle on one end and a very small needle on the opposite end. So leave a long tail and place in the center of the machine. Then with the small needle, pick up the stitches directly from the machine onto the cable. The needle I'm using is the smallest in my interchangeable set. You can use any needle size as long as it will fit between the teeth on the machine. So when it's off the machine, simply replace the small needle with the 6mm needle. From here, you'll be able to knit the 5-row decrease and then switch over to the cast-on edge and pick up stitches there and knit the 5-row decrease. Another method is not using waste yarn. On the cast-on edge, every other stitch is twisted. This is just how the machine works. So you can see here that this stitch, the right leg, is in the front and goes over to the back and around the drawstring. This stitch here, the left leg is in front and goes around, and the right leg is in back. So we need to fix this before we can do the 5-row decrease. So let me show you how to do that. Start by finding the first stitch of the row. That will be the first stitch to the left of the tail, and insert your needle from right to left into each stitch in this row. I should mention that this is a sample and you want to make sure that you knit your tubes with a long tail of at least 5 yards or 4.6 meters. Once you have all of the stitches on the needle, you can remove the drawstring from that last row of stitches. So I have all the stitches on my needle, and you can see here that they do not look the same. Let's fix these stitches. First, place a stitch marker to indicate the beginning of the row. Now, the first stitch here is in the correct orientation. The right leg is in the front and goes to the back. So we're simply going to slip that from one needle to the other. The second stitch here is twisted. So what we want to do is insert our needle from the back to the front underneath the right leg of the stitch. So again, this stitch is going to be good. We'll just simply slip that to the needle. This stitch, we want to come in from behind underneath that right leg and slip it over to the right needle. So slip this stitch to the right needle, and this one, come in behind the right leg and slip it over to the right needle. And you'll just repeat this to the end of the row. And this is what it looks like after untwisting the stitches. All of the stitches look the same. So now to do the bind off edge, all you want to do is pick up the stitches going right to left through the middle of the stitch underneath that right leg and just go all the way around. So the bind off edge does not have any stitches that are twisted. So afterwards, you can just remove the drawstring from that last row of stitches. The last method is to modify regular tube lengths. If you have a favorite pattern, you can still decrease the top. For this method, we will use the knitting needles to pick up stitches. To do that, we find the first stitch, count down 5 rows, and again, go behind the right leg of every stitch. When you have all of the stitches from that row on the cable, you can go ahead and remove the 5 rows of stitching. Make sure you don't cut that yarn because you will be using it to knit the decrease rows. If you are using your interchangeable tips, remove the 6mm tip and add a smaller size needle. This will make it a lot easier to weave the needle through all of the stitches. As you can see, there are several ways that you can knit the tube and pick up stitches before knitting the 5-row decrease. The decrease pattern is the same no matter which method you choose. I hope you give this crown decrease a try. It's a beautiful way to finish off circular knitting machine projects. Thanks for watching.